Hi, Brad. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I am quite excited to have you on the show, Brian, for some reasons. All right. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking, because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation and move to that of a beautiful one, it takes the
Mm,
application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, Brian, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I just don't want to remain in the dark. And now, that's why I believe our conversation is going to be very, very important to me for that reason. Okay, now the second reason why I'm excited to have Brian on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You know, Brian, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks believe me or trust me for quality information. And that's why I became excited when I came across your profile and I read about you.
mm.
Yeah, because I believe our conversation is going to be insightful. So for that reason, Brian, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your journey, your personal or professional journey. Now we're just so curious, we want to know how you got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Brian, over to
Well,
you.
thank you, Elijah. I'll keep the origin story kind of short. I was conceived to a mother out of wedlock. She was married, and she her husband was in another country, and she didn't think he was coming home. And she met my father and fell in love. And then my father also got her cousin pregnant at the same time. So then her heart was broken, and she had three children already. And she did not want to be a single mom with four children. So she called her husband and told him that she was pregnant. He said, "You have to have an abortion." And so that started my chaos. That started the my in utero experience. Though she nurtured me in a very secure way for those first 7 months, because research tells us that as early as the fourth week after conception, the fetus can hear. As early as the second trimester, the fetus is capable of psychological processing. I found my biological mother, 37 years later, and it was a beautiful reunion, and we did therapy together. And I asked her, "At what point did you know that you were going to place me for adoption?" Because I always had an intuitive sense that I had a good birth experience. I had a good in utero experience. And she said, "For the first 7 months, I loved being pregnant. I loved you. I worked out. I ate right. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I did everything I was supposed to do." She said, "But at 7 months, I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep you. So I had to just try to act like you weren't there." And that probably was the catalyst to the struggles that became a chaotic early experience, and sometimes even adult experience for me. So I was placed for adoption, and my biological father wasn't able to find me. He knew that I had been born, but he wasn't able to find me. I also reunified with him after 37 years. I was adopted into a home with two beautiful people, two loving people, but they had a history of trauma themselves. And so they were both children of alcoholics. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, had severe post traumatic stress disorder. My mother was a parentified child. She raised her nine siblings as the oldest female in the home. And so they struggled with being emotionally present, and their form of discipline during that time, which was very common, was corporal punishment, which bordered on physical and emotional abuse. And they did the best they could, but they didn't understand what it meant to raise a child who had an early history of trauma. I also had a sister who was adopted. She had a much more chaotic early in utero experiences than I did, and her combination of developmental and emotional delays combined with my parents both being parentified and hyper responsible created a World War III experience of lots of hitting and lots of yelling and just lots of overwhelm. And that gave birth to my career as a mental health professional. That people ask me how I got started. I was born to do what I do. I was born to have an understanding different than other people have because I've lived it from conception and I understand it. I have 7 children now. I have 1 adopted child, and that gave birth to my professional career of specializing in trauma and adoption and foster care.
Amazing. What a very, very touching and interesting story you've got, Brian. You know, one thing I love about the story is the ending. The fact that all of the experiences, they didn't waste. You made use of what you've gathered, what you've known, what you've gone through, and now you're offering it as a solution to other folks who might be stuck in it. And one other thing I learned from your story is no matter the situation surrounding your birth, as long as you're determined for success, you will definitely be successful. And I love what you said, the part where you said you were born to do this. You were born to do this. I can feel the passion while you were talking, and that's a very important one. So thank you so very much, Brian, for becoming who you were born to be. You know, not many people manifest themselves. And just like what you're doing now, I believe a lot of folks are benefiting from what you've got already. I know that, sure. Okay, so that's going to lead to our very first question. Brian, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so now, how can one heal a traumatic past? You know, a lot of people struggle with these stuff and they've tried this, they've tried that, and nothing is working. So, what are the tips or insight that you can share on how to get off this traumatic past and all of these stuffs affecting people from letting go and moving forward? Can you talk to us about that?
That's an excellent question, Elijah, and it goes back to something you said at the very beginning, where you are a seeker of light and moving from chaos to light. And what that requires from a psychological standpoint is moving from an unconscious place to a conscious place. So the significance of trauma that most people don't understand is that a traumatic experience is an emotional experience. Emotion is energy in motion. So a traumatic experience gets stored in your body as a stuck energy because you are unable to express, process, and understand it. So trauma is any stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, and unpredictable. And when you don't have an opportunity to express, process, and understand that stressful event becomes potentially, instead of just being a short-term stressful event, it becomes and has the capacity to be a long-term, potentially brain and life altering stressful event because you don't have an opportunity to express, process, and understand. Now, the problem in our society is that we don't like to deal with emotions. We don't like to deal with sadness. We don't like to deal with anger. We don't like to deal with fear. And the reason we don't like to deal with those emotional experiences is because those emotional experiences cause us to feel stress. And when we feel stress, we move into survival. And when we move into survival, we want to control or we want to change or we want to suppress an experience. So when you start talking about how do you heal trauma, the first step to healing trauma is number one, realizing that just because something traumatic happened in your life, something bad happened, that doesn't mean you are a bad person. A lot of times we take traumatic experiences and we blame ourselves for them in an unconscious way. In a conscious way, you can have a conversation and say, oh, I know it wasn't my fault. But in a deep emotional unconscious way, you blame yourself for that experience. So the first part is realizing it's not your fault. The second part of realizing is that for every negative experience, there's also a positive potentially even greater positive outcome because of that negative experience. So you can have these traumatic experiences in your life, but you can't get stuck in the fact that it was a traumatic experience that occurred to you. Therefore, it's who you are. You have to realize that because of that experience, you have now been shaped and molded to potentially become something bigger and greater and more impactful than you ever imagined possible. So those are two really important things. Realizing that trauma, it is an experience that gets stored within us, and you got to gain awareness of it, and it's not your fault. And two, you can take that traumatic experience and you can grow from it. You can become a more powerful person. Now, how do you work through the trauma? The first part of working through the trauma is coming to a deep awareness that it is there. It is a deep honoring that it is there. It is a deep connection to the event and to the experience itself. Most of us don't like to really look at trauma because it's painful. In order to get out of something, you have to be willing to get into it. So I'm going to give you some really simple steps as a start. 1, take some deep breaths. 2, go into your mind and start to tell yourself the story of the trauma. And as you're telling yourself the story of the trauma, see yourself in the story. See who you are in the story. Now get really quiet, really slow down, and as you're telling yourself, re-narrating the story of that experience, and you're seeing yourself in that experience, ask yourself, what do you feel? What do you feel? So you're not even talking first person, you're talking to yourself because you had a self that experienced that emotional experience that still lives within you. It's not your conscious daily experience, but when you become stressed, that self, depending on the stress, that self gets activated and that self is what shows up. So you get quiet, you take the deep breaths, you narrate the trauma story, you see yourself in the story, and then you ask yourself, have a conversation with yourself. A lot of times you may not have ever wanted to do that. You have a conversation with yourself and you ask yourself, how do you feel? And self is going to tell you in that moment. Self is going to tell you that they feel scared, they feel sad, they feel angry. And when they tell you that, you say thank you, and then you say, give me more of that. Tell me more. Express that to me more. You open your arms to that self and you say, I want to hear it. 9 times out of 10, when it comes to trauma, none of us have had an opportunity to express, process, and understand. And when you've not had an opportunity to express, which is just to express, narrate the story, when you've not had an opportunity to process, and that's to cry about it, to be angry about it, to be scared about it, to let your body shake, to let your body clench, to let your body feel the energy it needs to feel, and then to feel that to the greatest degree that you can. Once you've made it through that process, and so many times because emotion is so scary, we think that if we go into that trauma, we're never going to come out of again. But what I want your audience to know is that experience is nothing more than a cell in your body. You can't even see it. It's so small you can't even see it. The significance is that it packs an energy. It packs a charge. That charge is what you felt. Now, when you can express it and narrate it, when you can process it and give into the emotional experience of it, once you get through it, and it's probably only going to take you 5, 10, 20 minutes, a really good, deep emotional expression, really good, deep emotional processing, then you're going to calm down. You're going to come through it. You're going to wipe your eyes, your tears, and I like to let the tears flow. In my emotional work with professionals and with parents and with kids, I always say we don't use Kleenex for tears. We only use Kleenex for snot because tears have the same chemical makeup as cortisol. So when you're crying, you're literally releasing stress from your body. Too often we want to just wipe them away. The only time you need a Kleenex is when snot's running down your nose and it's looking kind of gross. Then blow your nose. So after you've blown your nose, then you allow yourself some understanding of that experience. You allow yourself to process through that experience and make sense of it. And here's the thing. You don't resolve trauma. The traumatic experience is an energy that you went through. It's an energy that has shaped you. What you have to do is you have to learn to pay attention to it. You have to learn to honor it, and you have to learn to be aware of it when it shows up. And then you get real gentle with it. You say, I see you. You're moving on in the day-to-day. You say, I see you. I hear you. I feel you. You take deep breaths. You say, we're going to be okay. You calm yourself down. You get your thinking back on track, and then you move forward accordingly. That is a thumbnail of the process to healing trauma. The process of healing trauma is taking something unconscious and making it conscious. You take the unconscious and you make it conscious. You take what's in the darkness and you shine light on it. And you keep shining light on it. And you keep shining light on it so it's not scary anymore. And when it's no longer scary, it stops controlling you. It stops overtaking you.
Powerful. Powerful, Bryan. You see, I learned a series of things from all that you said, but the one I felt the most was that part where you say, in order to get out of something, you have to get in. And I never knew that tears helps relieve stress until you just said it. I never knew. And one thing the society taught us is that we need to, oh, that's your traumatic experience. Don't go back and do it. Don't think about it. And the only solution is you have to go in there, like you mentioned. It takes, okay, you've got to cry and do all of those things. You just have to get out of it. You cannot overcome something you are avoiding. I got that. I really
That's right.
felt that. I really felt that, man. Okay, so we have two questions more, alright? Now, this is for parents who's got kids that tells lies, they tell lies all the time. So now let's say they ask you, hey Bryan, why do kids lie and what can we do about it? This stuff has just been bothering us for quite some time now. Any tips or insight? What would your response be?
Absolutely. So I don't have just tips and insights. I can tell you how to end lying. But in order to end it, you have to understand it. And that's what most of the time we don't do. So first of all, when a child lies or an adult, anyone tells a lie, they tell a lie out of stress and out of fear. That's very important to remember. The more stressful the situation, the deeper into the brainstem you go. Now, what's stored in the brainstem are our most painful, scary, traumatic experiences. So that's where trauma gets stored. Trauma gets stored in the brainstem as a memory system and in the cellular system as an energy. So the more stressed, the deeper into the brainstem. So if you're really stressed in a moment and someone asks you to be honest, you can't be honest because the worst thing that ever happened to you is threatening to happen again in the moment. So for children, when a child has done something that they're not supposed to do, and the parent says, "Did you do that?" The child automatically, they can't do anything else in that moment except tell a lie. Because in that moment, they're stressed and they're in survival. And in survival, we all have to survive. So what happens is the child tells the lie. Well, the parent already knew the child was lying to begin with. The parent already knew the child did the thing, and the parent probably already knew the child was going to tell a lie. So now when that happens, when that reality occurs, the parent becomes more stressed. So the parent was stressed when they found out the child did what they weren't supposed to. They were more stressed when they found out when the child tells the lie. Now they're even more stressed now that the lie has been told. So the parent themselves goes into their brainstem. So now whatever's in the parent's brainstem around lying and whatever energy matches that situation manifests the intensity of the parent in that moment. So typically, what we want to do is we want to say, "You're lying to me. You tell me the truth." It's physiologically impossible. It is physiologically impossible to be honest in a time when you're extremely stressed. So the first thing parents need to realize that when your child is telling a lie, it's because they are in a life or death situation. You have to realize it. Believe it, don't believe it, just try it. You take a deep breath. Child tells you a lie. You take a deep breath. You slow down. Nothing so fast has to happen. See, stress makes us go really fast. Stress kicks in our obsessive thinking. Stress kicks in our control, our change, our suppressing dynamic. That's all we want to do when something bad happens and we get stressed. We want to control, suppress, or change. So you take some deep breaths, you slow down, you look at your child, remember what I'm telling you. They're scared, they're terrified, they're in survival. Now, when you see your child as scared and terrified and in survival, as opposed to just telling you a lie to manipulate you or be defiant, your whole energy is going to change. As soon as you connect to that place, you look at your child and you say, we're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to be okay. And then you walk away. You walk away. And when you walk away, what you're doing is you're taking your stressful vibration and you're moving it away from your child's stressful vibration. So you're moving it away. So you walk away. And then as you walk away, you're giving yourself space to calm your vibe. You're giving yourself space to change your frequency. You're giving yourself space to shift your own energy. And then you shift your own energy. You find a place. You keep thinking about what I'm telling you. You keep thinking about that your child is stressed. Your child is scared. Your child is in a place of survival. And you move from your head place to your heart place. Now, when you're in that place, now when you're in your heart place, you're in a loving place. You're in a compassionate place. So you give your child time to calm down. Wait an hour, wait a couple hours, and then you come back. See, you have to be willing to invest the time and the energy to get a different result. Otherwise, you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. Einstein said that's the definition of insanity. So you give your child a couple hours to calm down, then you come back and you say, hey, honey. You kind of interrupt whatever they're doing. You say, hey, honey. You take their hand. You say, Daddy loves you. Listen to these words. Daddy loves you. Everything's going to be okay. Honey, when you tell me a lie, it scares me. See, I said, when you tell me a lie. I didn't say, when you lied to me. I didn't come back 2 hours later and say, now tell me the truth. I came back and I said, honey, when you tell me a lie. See, when I say, when you tell me a lie, the child doesn't feel threatened. They just start automatically thinking, what lie? Which lie did I say? Which lie was it? So there's no threat, but now they're in their own space, which is fine. Once they do that, then you say, when you tell me a lie, it scares me. It makes me feel like you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, I can't keep you safe. Do you understand? They shake their head, yes. You give them a little kiss, you give them a little hug, you just say, we're going to be okay. And you leave it alone, you walk away. Now, when you walk away, what's happening is you are allowing, now Bruce Perry is a preeminent neuropsychiatrist, neuroscientist and psychiatrist. And he says the brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time. So when you handle your child's lie in the manner I'm telling you, what you're doing is you're planting a little love seed right in the midst of their brainstem. They're going to lie again. 9 times out of 10, they're going to lie again. On a rare occasion, I've had this happen. I've had it happen that parents have used this formula and their child has never lied again to them. Because you plant a little love seed in that brainstem, and when they do something again and you ask them, their brain returns to the way you handled it the last time. See, your brain returns to the way you handled it the last time. So the next time they tell a lie, see, you've had some positive reinforcement. So you come back again, their brain returns to the way you handled it. There's a lot less threat. There's a lot less anxiety. There's much greater likelihood they're going to tell you the truth. And then over time, if you can be consistent, and this doesn't take a lot of time, if you can be consistent, when your child does something they're not supposed to, when you come and ask them, instead of them returning to a place in their brain where the worst thing that ever happened to them is starting to happen again, they return to the way you handle it. And they'll take the risk and they'll be honest. And when they're honest, you've done it. You've made it. You've made it. That's the how to inline formula.
What a great formula, Brian. I really wish our parents, especially my parent, knew this when we was kids, man. It was the total opposite, I tell you. That was a great one, man. I love that. I love that. Okay, so in order to bring this to an end, Brian, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought, And to those who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, how can that be possible?
Fantastic. So, one final thought, Elijah, is that in any given moment, negative, positive, we always have two choices. We can continue to react from our same blueprints of stress and fear and overwhelm. And from that reaction, we can be shaming, we can be blaming, we can be angry, we can be overwhelmed, we can be punitive. We can continue to do that from that reaction in that moment. Or in any given moment, we can stop. We can take 3 to 10 deep breaths. We can slow down and we can choose love. Because there are only two primary emotions, love and fear. And where one is, the other one isn't. And the only thing that keeps us from a space of love is our ability to slow down and breathe and connect. And if your audience would like to learn more, they can follow me on Instagram at Bryan Post Official, BRYANPOST, Bryan Post Official. They can also visit my website, bryanpost.com, and they can also get a free copy of my book, From Fear to Love. It's sold almost 1 million copies at feartolovebook.com.
Beautiful. That was a great one. So that's going to be the end of the show, Brian. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this, oh man, amazing stuff with us. It means a whole lot, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.